And I'm going to say all this stuff remembering full well that maybe 2 videos ago I explained how I couldn't just go off and make my own version of GNOME, and if the maintainers of GNOME decided not to take my patches, it would be difficult for me. But we're going to set that aside. We're going to set aside the free rider effect, and we're going to assume that's all bullshit. Even though I think those are major problems, we're just going to assume it's bullshit, and we'll just see what we would need to do, at least to give us the end users, a ray of hope of having something that they'll actually work for us. The one thing is that we need to know is that Linux will be just, I'm gonna throw everything out the window. Everything. They're gonna take a snapshot of Linux at one point in time, and they're gonna fix it to make it usable for the end user. There's not going to be an etc. directory. There is going to be a control panel directory. Everything is going to make sense to a brand new user that's never used the thing before. Okay? That'll be 1. 2, these settings will never change, and we'll make that promise. It'll never ever change. But it won't be just to the end. There'll be a mix between where things are located being in the hands of the end users with their feedback, hopefully not infighting. I want it to be panel control. No, I want it to be control panel, and also people from commercial environments. And all we're going to do is we're not going to be developing anything. All we're going to be doing is perfecting the what I mean by developing is feature freeze. No more new features. Because all it really matters right now, none of the applications in Linux cry out to cause it. There's no killer app in Linux. There are none. They're all imitations of apps that are already out there in the commercial world, and we want our commercial apps to come to us. So what we got to do is we just got to get the base system solid and ready for those commercial people to come in and have it easy for them to port their apps over. And we have to have it so that we can promise to them we're not going to change the basic setup at all. That's it. The other end of this will be people that will follow the apps that we have in our basic setup. And if we find that as those apps grow and change, we'll try to work with the developers. And if we find as those apps grow and change, and if they still fit into what we have, it's going to be everybody's got to fit into us. Except for the commercial developers. The commercial developers are going to have to, they're going to tell us what we need to do to fit into them. You see. So their apps will run, and what we need to do to keep things from not becoming too impossible for them to use. One of those things is going to be a guarantee that bootloading is not going to be a problem, that sound is not going to be a problem, that the X window is not going to be a problem. So all we're going to do is perfect what we have and maybe backport things in for more support for additional drivers. But we're first going to go and we're first going to get those drivers from the vendors. And we're not going to give a damn about what the Free Software Foundation says or anything. I don't care if every Linux user, every developer hates our guts. We don't care. We are going to get this. We're going to get their software actually to be used by a lot of people. And we're going to have their benevolence actually be honored. Okay? The way we got to do that is ignore them. It sounds silly, but it's true. Okay, and then once we get all that stuff in there and we've got a solid base system, we don't care about getting any of these apps in there. We don't care if we break the installation of Emacs. We don't give a shit. If we can get Adobe in there, Adobe Acrobat and PDF and all that. And meanwhile, okay, well, how are we going to pay for this stuff? Well, we have to actually pay some people to work full time on this, to maintain this core solid system that the application developers could then bring their stuff into. And if it's too costly for the people to port their app over, we, the end users, will collect money to pay for that and pay for some guy to go over there and sign a non-disclosure agreement and port the fucking thing. And we'll have a choice. If we do that, we will have a choice. And then, as our little thing starts getting more popular, and after it passes all the other Linux distros, they'll start rethinking about what they're doing and maybe start coming into line. But that's the only way to do it. So first you got to get this core base system, and second we got to pay people to sign non-disclosure agreements and port those apps over. And the third thing we need to do is we need to collect enough money from enough people to fund this. Whatever this thing is, and we have to have enough people working in this little organization to get this thing going right. Things aren't just going to magically fall into place because everybody around the world are doing their own thing and is going to get everything together. The commercial application vendors can't deal with that kind of chaos, so they don't bother porting their apps over. Or if they ever did, they never go back and do it again because they found out that, oh shit, we got all this work to do to get this app that we just ported over a year ago back in this thing. Fuck that, we're not doing it. I'm sure there were a lot of experimental apps out there made by vendors that were thinking about porting their apps over to Linux that found out after when they were finally done with their project, 2 releases later, it wouldn't even install on the distribution of the day. So you can't have that kind of thing. So that's how we get around it. That's my suggestion. Since I have no programming skills, I don't want to be involved with it. I wouldn't even want to be involved with the money, but I would want to make sure that whoever's involved with it is good and honest with it, and it's a pretty big organization with plenty of insight. And I call this blue dogs. In politics, and blue dogs, there are some people that are members of the Democratic Party that like to vote Republican an awful lot when it comes to certain things. And they're usually the swing votes, but they usually actually steer the direction of legislation. And that's what us, the desktop users, need to be. We need to be blue dogs, So we're crossing the party line, but we're not embracing just the open source. That does nothing for us. We can't program. We're crossing the line. We're putting the drivers inside the distro, etc., etc., etc. But at the end of the day, if we want something that's going to work for a lot of people, so a lot of people can actually benefit from the work Linus does, and maybe can benefit from the other open source apps. Maybe a lesson can be learned by the community as to how to get this right. But it's got to go well, it's got to build momentum, and it's got to be able to have staying power. And you say, well, they already tried that. That was PC Linux OS. Well, you got to have, whoever's going to do this is literally going to have the kind of money that Mark Shuttleworth has. You have to be willing to take a risk and not have a plan to make money off it. I'm not saying that Shuttleworth is, but basically what this whole thing has got to be is it's got to be that humanity as a whole has to understand, work together. It's like everybody knows that it'd be a very bad thing if we didn't have paved roads in our country, except for the libertarians. Yeah, you. But okay, get the laugh out. But at the end of the day, most people are willing to pay taxes if it means there's going to be roads out there. And an operating system is like a road. Everybody needs to use a road, almost. Almost everybody has a computer in this country, and it should be treated like a commodity, and it shouldn't be treated like something to make money off of. It's like, if you had to hire a consultant to tell you how to drive over the potholed, bashed roads, no one would have an incentive to pave it. And that's the thing with Linux. No one has the incentive to fix it up. I'm going to get some more.